Good morning. It's certainly my pleasure to be here with you this morning. But first of all, I'd like to thank Industry Week for giving me an opportunity to share a few words. You know, I always enjoy opportunities to talk about the activities that are taking place in our manufacturing plant, because those are stories that often represent situations that otherwise never get told. So I want to thank you all for having this type of session to open up some dialogue and have some deep discussion about what's actually happened on the manufacturing floor. I was recently reminded about something that Charles Darwin said, and I think it's most appropriate when considering the challenges that Toyota has faced and continues to face given the current situation in Japan. You know, Darwin said, "It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but it's the one that's most adaptable to change." And I think you would be hard-pressed to find another company that's adapted to a series of circumstances equal to Toyota's recently. Today in Japan, the recovery from the March 11th earthquake and subsequent tsunami continues. Obviously, the need to focus on the lives of the people of Japan is first and foremost. But on the business side, it's evident that this catastrophe is causing part shortages for our company, our industry, and many other businesses as well. Its effects could very well be felt around the world. For Toyota, we're adapting. We're constantly assessing the supplies of parts, and we'll make adjustments where necessary. It will once again test our flexibility. There's also no doubt that 2010 was one of the most challenging in Toyota's 53-year history. I'm not going to try to review every detail today, but I would like to focus my presentation on how we managed our company during those very trying times. To help better understand our situation, let me first remind you that over the past 25 years, Toyota has seen tremendous growth across North America, as demonstrated by our 14 plants that I'll share a little bit more with you about in just a moment. But then 2008 came along, and we all saw one of the worst recessions ever. Followed that, we entered into a phase of announcing a high number of recalls. But despite all of that, we actually still accomplished quite a bit. For example, last year, Toyota was still the #1 retail automotive manufacturer for the second year in a row. Lexus was the #1 brand for the 11th consecutive year. And the Camry, which is made at the plant where I work in Kentucky, was still the #1 selling sedan in America for the 9th consecutive year. And then on the reliability front, we dominated the highly respected Consumer Reports annual car reliability survey with 17 Toyota, Scion, and Lexus vehicles ranked as most reliable. And 12 made the recommended list, more in both categories than any other automaker. And for the third year in a row, Scion ranked #1 in the survey with the fewest problems of any brand. 8 of Toyota's products won 2011 top safety picks from the IIHS. That's the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety. And most recently, we had 7 highest ranking awards in the J.D. Power and Associates Vehicle Dependability Study, more than any other brand. But before I go any further, let me just give you a little bit of a snapshot of how I got to where I am in Toyota today. As was mentioned, I started with Toyota back in 1987. The company decided to build its first wholly owned plant in Kentucky, and I was fortunate enough to get my foot in the door before there was even a door built. At the time, I was offered a role as mechanical engineer because that's my background. But I was so intrigued by Toyota's management style that I asked them if I could take a supervisory role as a group leader instead. I was fortunate that Toyota granted me that request, and my role grew quickly as I took on the responsibility for overall plant facilities operations, later engineering, and then you'll hear a little bit more about a few other things that I did after that. But then in 1995, I rotated to the manufacturing side of the business when I was asked to start up a new division called Production Administration before assuming the role of General Manager of Assembly in the year 2000. In 2006, I relocated and took on the role of Senior Vice President of Operations at our oldest plant in North America, located in Long Beach, California. And within a year, I was promoted to President there, where I stayed for an additional 2 years. After Long Beach, 3 years in Long Beach, I was then asked to rotate back to another one of our larger sites in Indiana during the economic downturn. The Indiana plant happened to be, of all of our sites at the time, one of the most devastated, negatively impacted because of the downturn, because of the vehicles that they had. But I served there for about a year and a half, and I had the honor of launching the Highlander into North America, and then the all-new Sienna, or some people now call it the Swagger Wagon. Finally, last summer, I came back to the Kentucky plant where it all started, and currently serve as president. Now, the main reason I wanted to point out my work history is sort of to demonstrate the direction that Toyota is going. One of our goals has always been to become a stronger company through providing our regions with more autonomy, more power in local decision making. And as we grew our operations, we knew that we had to develop a local management team to truly become a global company. So those of us who've been with the company and have a strong foundation in the Toyota production system are now being relied on to carry the torch. We know we must become more self-sufficient, and we must continue to feed more of our diverse practices into the Toyota way. Now, here are some examples of some colleagues of mine who are also heading up plant operations. Chris Nielsen, he started as a specialist in purchasing at the Kentucky plant also back in 1987, and he's now president of our San Antonio, Texas facility. Norm Buffano was part of the startup team in Princeton, and he's now president of that facility. And Brian Crenark, who started at Toyota Production Engineering and was part of several plant startups, is now president of our Ontario operations. But we go further. At our Toyota Technical Center, with the heart of its operations in Michigan, we now have 3 American chief engineers. Randy Stevens, on the Avalon, Mike Swears with the Tundra, Greg Burness with the Venza. And they now will have greater influence on how these North American models are designed for local tastes. And we believe, as Americans, they will have a little bit of an edge in better understanding the American customer. We currently operate 14 manufacturing plants, including one getting ready to start production later this year right outside of Tupelo, Mississippi. Our annual purchasing of parts, materials, goods, and services from North American suppliers total about $25 billion a year. We directly employ more than 35,000 in North America, and our investment here is currently valued at about $23 billion. So you can see we have a significant presence in North America. We're currently building 12 models here, including some very popular models such as the Camry, the Corolla, and the Sienna. There are more than 1,800 Toyota, Lexus, and Scion dealerships, which sold more than 2 million vehicles in 2010 alone. But I have the privilege and the enormous responsibility of managing Toyota's largest plant in all of North America. Our Kentucky plant, located in Georgetown, which is just an hour south of Cincinnati, is one of the largest manufacturing facilities in the world. It spans some 7.5 million square feet under one roof. That's about 156 football fields, if you really like to do the math. And it's truly integrated. We have dye manufacturing, stamping, body weld, paint, assembly. We have our own plastic shop on site, and also a facility, powertrain facility, where we build 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engines and also axles. And as I just mentioned, we build the Camry, as well as the hybrid, Camry hybrid, the Avalon sedan, and the Venza crossover. Now, the Kentucky facility is a $5.4 billion investment, and we have nearly 7,000 full-time employees there. This is our 25th year anniversary in Kentucky, so we have a lot of experienced and skilled team members who know how to build a quality vehicle. And there is evidence of that. Our Kentucky plant is the most decorated in North America by J.D. Power and Associates for initial plant quality. Kentuckians have a lot of pride, and they wanted to prove to Toyota executives in Japan that they could use the tools of the Toyota production system and build vehicles at a very high quality level. But the role of the Kentucky plant has evolved. You might say with age and experience comes additional responsibility. So since our Kentucky plant is the most mature, we guide and mentor other operations too. We play the role of mother plant for our Mississippi site here in Tupelo that I mentioned earlier. We're also responsible for making sure that one of the lines at Subaru Isuzu up in northern Indiana, which also builds the Camry, is properly supported. And we still maintain the role of mother plant of our plant down in Baja, Mexico. But make no mistake, our team members are truly our greatest asset. That's part of the reason that we went into this year with great enthusiasm and anticipation. Plus, we wanted to take last year's experiences and make our company even stronger. But to do that, we needed a workforce that was motivated and eager to move forward. And even through the tough times, we never lost sight of that. And this is really where my story for today really begins. I'd like to share with you the 3 key areas that we focused on during the dip in sales and production. And those areas are managing people, managing costs, and managing our production lines. Now, in terms of managing people, I was fortunate enough to be influenced from the very early days I started with Toyota back in 1987. I will never forget a meeting that I had with Mr. Fujio Cho, who was president at the time of our Kentucky plant. He would invite several members of the management team over to his house on Friday nights, and it was a great way to get to know each other. We had some great conversations. Excuse me. Excuse me. We often talked about why companies succeed and why some others fail, and how we could best utilize the principles of the Toyota way. I distinctly remember a conversation that we had about the decision making of another company's management team. The decision was being made from the company's offices in the north, but it was going to impact the facilities that were located in the south. The cultures were different, and it really wasn't working out very well. Employees were not happy. And Mr. Cho told me, always remember, management should work for team members instead of team members working for management. We should always show respect for every individual. And we need to make sound decisions locally because no one knows what's best for your team members in your own culture better than you. And I've never forgotten that. And I've patterned my management style to demonstrate my belief in that simple truth. We also had the mindset from the very beginning that decisions that we made should not only benefit our team members in the short term, but in the long term too. So we place a very high priority on long-term employment security for our employees. In fact, since day one, we've managed and will continue to manage and operate our businesses in a steady and consistent manner that creates long-term employment path for each of our team members. We tell them from the very first day that they're hired, we want them to be successful, and we want to be able to provide them with competitive wages and benefits. There is much to be gained when your employees can come to work every day, realize that they're well compensated, and they don't have to worry about layoffs. Our industry reminds me sometime of a roller coaster ride, and we have to manage for the good and the bad times. So during one of the toughest years, we were able to demonstrate that philosophy of not laying off a single Toyota team member. Even though some of our plants, like the plant that I was at in Indiana, was actually idle, sometimes for months at a time. Now, as you can imagine, the result of shutting down a plant is quite costly. But in the long run, we think that the cost of sending everyone home and laying them off is even higher. Why? Because we believe when you do that, you actually squander the opportunity to retrain and refocus your workforce. We wanted to take advantage of our team members' capabilities, so we had them making improvements to their processes. We used their ideas to make the lines more efficient. While our plants were idle, we got creative. On a voluntary basis, we rotated a small group of our team members from our plants in Indiana and Texas over to Kentucky. We sent some of our experienced members from Kentucky down to Mississippi. And we're still sharing some of those resources today. We also used the downtime for environmental, OSHA, and diversity training as well as improving problem-solving skills and standardized work. Let me give you a few examples of this. Our team members on the door line gave us some important feedback about a specific process where the door padding was being installed. Now, after the Kaizen team investigated, we found that the push force needed to install the padding was high, causing too much physical exertion by our team members to install. This also led to damaged material. An adjustment was made, and the door carrier was made more stable, and the results were very positive very quickly. This one Kaizen resulted in improvements in 4 key areas. First, in safety, because the push force of the team members was reduced from 23 kilograms to just around 6.8. Our quality was improved because our audit showed after we made that change we had no more defects. And since we were either reworking or scrapping some of those trim pads, cost was reduced to about $6,000 a month. Plus our team members were pumped because we implemented their idea and we made their process better. In assembly, we were seeing a high number of scratches or mutilations on our bumpers. We were installing bumpers very early in the assembly process. So our team members came up with the idea of moving the bumper install much further down the line into the final area, reducing the possibilities for mutilation and scratches. The result was a drastic reduction in scratches and a reduction in rework and scrap to the tune of about $220,000 a year. Again, we took advantage of the stoppage of production to implement this Kaizen and many others. Pretty simple, isn't it? Now, this kind of activity not only made our processes more efficient, but it also succeeded in keeping the minds of our team members sharp. So when production volumes started to return to normal, our workforce was ready to go. And contrary to that, if you lay people off, you clearly lose that advantage. Now, when I began my career at Toyota, what stood out to me most in the beginning was the type of culture that Toyota wanted to create in its plants here in North America. It's a culture of empowering people and highlighting problems. It taught us that it was okay to make a mistake, as long as you share that experience with everyone else so that they don't have to make the mistake as well. We always want to improve and get better. I'll never forget another experience that a colleague of mine had with Mr. Cho. Now, while the Kentucky plant was under construction, we had meetings every day to discuss how things were progressing. And it was an overall sort of status of the plant. As we all sat around a big table and everyone had their opportunity to report and share their input, one of my colleagues, a guy by the name of Jim, I won't tell you anymore, but a guy by the name of Jim, he was really excited because that week he had a long list of items that he'd accomplished for the week. And he was bubbling over because, he really wanted to impress the president. And he did so. He shared his material in the meeting. But after the meeting, Mr. Cho came up to him and said, "Jim, we know you're capable of doing good things. That's why we hired you. But next time, please share your problems with the group. Otherwise, we can't help you solve them or truly understand the challenges that you're having." And of course, Mr. Cho had this big, sort of infectious smile that made you know that he meant what he said. And that was a good lesson, not only for Jim, but for everyone in our organization. It helped us to see the culture that Toyota wanted to develop. Another priority for our company was cost reduction. For example, when the downturn hit, we had to take some pretty quick action, especially if you recall, as I mentioned, that we didn't lay off any employees, so we still continued to carry the labor costs, with significantly reduced production. So we decided the approach from the executive team was first to suspend all bonus pay for everyone across the board. Actually, as executives, we also agreed to a salary reduction. But the overall approach we wanted to share was what we call shared sacrifice. But we knew we had to do more. So we set up contests around the plant to see who could come up with the best ideas to help save money. We wanted to engage the employees even further in our cost reduction. All departments were involved, both production and administration. And a couple of examples of that. For example, our facilities department walked through the entire plant in Kentucky and found that we could do without many of the lights that we had on. Not only that, we replaced many of the bulbs with more efficient ones. And the result, we saved about $1 million a year. And that's no exaggeration. Then we took it a step further. We examined our parking lot. We already knew we were paying about $120 a night on parking lot lighting at the plant. And by identifying more efficient bulbs, we reduced that cost by $8 to $10 a night. Also, during some of the downturn, we utilized our team members to disassemble some equipment that was going to be removed by vendors, while others worked on some of the experimental projects. And speaking of experimental, for example, some of our team members came up with the idea of cutting back on the amount of mowing that we did on a regular basis. Our Kentucky plant sits on 1,300 acres, so we have a lot of grass to mow. But after the team met with officials from the local Fish and Wildlife Agency, we planted some natural grasses and trees that were native to the area, which cut down on the amount of mowing that we needed to do. It saved us a little bit of money, but more importantly, it had a positive impact on the environment. We actually received credit for a restoration project from the Wildlife Habitat Council for restoring areas back to their native species. When the economy goes bad and companies see profits plummet, it really affects everyone, including nonprofits. This really concerned us too. So during the recession, we were very proactive in our approach to the nonprofits that we've been supporting for many years. We invited them to the plant for a meeting so that we could be up front with them on how we were going to have to work together to work through this rough period. We told them that we simply had to reduce, but not eliminate our financial support. However, we had excess capacity in our manufacturing plants, and we had resources available, and we made it available to them in the form of manpower. So we offered those resources to the community in the form of people, both time and talent. During some of the time when our production lines were down, we sent some of our team members out into the community to assist organizations with work such as general maintenance, cleanup, painting, various odd jobs that required basic manpower that many nonprofits normally don't have access to. And then we took it a step further. We took our energy team and formed a community partnership focused on helping various agencies reduce their cost of energy. For example, in Scott County, Kentucky, we reviewed the courthouse operations and systems and developed a prioritized list of action plans. The results were a reduction of energy about 65%, more than $37,000 a year in that case, and the courthouse was also able to reduce its carbon footprint by 35%. We also met with the officials of the city and allowed our logistics experts to help make the city's solid waste routes even more efficient. We further demonstrated ways that we could reduce ergonomics and the ergonomic burden for many of their employees. I think the key point to all of this is we wanted to be up front with the nonprofits and acknowledge that we had, profit issues at the time, but at the same time, we demonstrated our willingness to help in other ways, which still got them positive results. And as the representatives of the nonprofits truly appreciated the support. Actually, we're still supporting with energy audits, but now we're actually teaching members of the city how to do it for themselves. Now, perhaps one of Toyota's best kept secrets is an organization called TSSC. That's the Toyota Production System Support Center. And TSSC is a company within Toyota whose primary mission is to share the Toyota production system with others who want to learn it. It also helps us give our people valuable experience in applying TPS in a wide variety of settings. When it began, back in 1992, TSSC's mission was focused on helping manufacturing companies apply TPS. But today, their clients include hospitals, schools, and food service companies too. Now, these pictures are from a nonprofit organization in Cincinnati. And by applying TPS to the assembly of food baskets last Thanksgiving and Christmas, TSSC helped the Society of St. Vincent de Paul fill more than 1,000 holiday food baskets at a rate of 13 seconds a basket, instead of the few minutes per basket that it took them before. That meant shorter wait time for the people receiving the baskets and a lot less time for the volunteers filling them. This is another example of how Toyota gives back to the community. Now maybe some of the meat and potatoes for some of you manufacturing folks. Because of the fluctuation of the market over the last few years, we gained a lot of valuable experience in reacting to volume changes. In other words, we really had to continue to improve our flexibility. We used to think that we were flexible, but we've reached a whole new level in terms of efficiently adjusting production volumes now. For example, our Kentucky plant is the largest volume plant. We're capable of producing more than 500,000 vehicles per year. And we adjust our volume based on orders from TMS because we operate on a pull system and not on a push system. Consequently, when our volumes increase or decrease, we make takt time changes to our production lines. Now our processes have basically predetermined numbers of steps, which may vary by model and include various options for each model. In other words, for each vehicle and for each katashiki of vehicle or type of vehicle and type of options, you have a varying number of steps to produce that vehicle. Now, as I mentioned, our Kentucky plant is fully integrated. We have die manufacturing, stamping, body roll assembly, paint, and plastics. And all of these shops have, of course, many processes. But for the sake of this example, I'm only going to use the assembly department. Now, we have 2 assembly lines at the Kentucky plant, which have about 800 processes. And if we make adjustments to takt time, which we've done many times over the years, each one of those processes is impacted and has to be adjusted to keep a smooth flow of work for each team member. Each one of those processes has a document that we call standardized work, which contains work elements or work steps that inform the production team members how to build the parts or what to install in his or her process. So when we make a takt time adjustment, each one of those steps, including the sequence, can be impacted. Now, if you do the math, using an example of 800 processes, time about 18 steps per process, That means potentially we have to make adjustments to more than 14,000 steps in all of those processes. And this is challenging enough, but to do that and still keep the workload balanced and smooth so that we can continue to build quality at a very high level is a little tedious. And that's only the assembly shops. All of the other shops have to do the same thing. So how long does this take? Well, it used to take us about 10 to 12 weeks. But now it takes us about 6 to modify all of our processes and retrain all of our team members. We're much better at it now because of our years of experience. And we now have templates with all of the data that shares all of the steps that need to be performed, so the planning is already done. It's just a matter of execution. And actually, if it wasn't for when you're speeding up your plant, you have to bring in additional employees, and we routinely, of course, like to make sure that the employees coming in give 2 weeks notice to their previous employer. If it wasn't for that 2-week gap, we could actually do it much sooner. So you can see the complexity of a takt time change, and it's very important in our industry to be able to adjust to the market or adapt to change. But even more important is to have the capability of making those adjustments without compromising quality of your product. Something else we've spent a great deal of our time on over the last few years is something we call process diagnostics. We have standardized work for each process, but we're constantly looking at ways to try to improve them. For example, we'll go into each process and evaluate up to 28 or so different elements on a routine basis to find opportunities for improvement. We also examined very closely, because we found that this is very critical, the smooth flow or smooth motion of each process. Components of that analysis are things like walk time, how much time the team members take to walk from the flow rack to the process. And since I started this activity actually back in TMMK in 2000, I can tell you the first process that we did this assessment on and evaluated through all of those elements, we were able to reduce about 4 miles of walk in an 8-hour process. That's amazing. Team members were walking an additional 4 miles. To them, the process was fine. And we found many, many others like that. And that was after a number of years of Kaizen. So this process actually works very well. Obviously, we want to minimize as much as possible any waste for our team members. But we also look at things like centralizing the location of our parts. But we also look at reducing the number of tools and fasteners that are needed to perform the job, and measure how many decisions each team member or process owner has to make. We found, and I think this is pretty obvious, there was really no revelation, but we found the more complex the decision making, the more difficult it is to assure 100% perfect defect-free product. So in another example, we examined a process in assembly where team members were installing sun visors. Our model mix on the assembly line was really just 2 vehicles, Camry and Avalon. But when you include the potential options such as colors, textures, sun visor mirrors with and without vanity light, we saw that there were up to 19 different decisions or possible decisions that a team member had to make. It was much too complex. Our answer was something we call kitting. Kitting helps to compress the process and simply provide the parts to the team members so that they can focus their thinking on the installation and not on the decision of the selection of the part. Instead of the team member having to look at the manifest and decide on the variation, their focus was strictly quality of install. And an offline team member is responsible for placing the parts in the kit. But we found kitting also significantly reduces the in-process walk time for the production worker. But most of all, it takes the complexity out of the process and consequently minimizes the opportunity for mistakes. It's an improvement. It's what we call Kaizen, which means improving every day, and that's the Toyota way. So over the years, a lot of people have asked me exactly what is the Toyota way. In short, it's a commitment to our people and the dedication to continuously improve. In closing, I'd like to remind you that the family of Toyota associates, dealers, and suppliers is nearly 200,000 strong across North America, across the United States. We take care of the people who make our product, and we provide them with one of the industry's best wage and benefit packages. But most importantly, we offer unprecedented job security, even in difficult economic times. During the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, we kept every one of our regular U.S. manufacturing team members employed, even as global auto sales plummeted. Instead of layoffs, we protected employees by adjusting production. Even during production lulls, we kept our team members employed by offering training to help them improve their skills, devoting time to improving production processes, and at times providing them paid time off to volunteer in the community. As the economy recovers, Toyota is investing in the future, recently adding more than 1,000 manufacturing jobs to our plant in San Antonio, Texas. We're hiring another 2,000 Americans in Mississippi right now. And finally, due to another tax time change, we're hiring about another 800 as we speak in Kentucky. We practice Kaizen, the philosophy of continuous improvement, in all of our functions of the business, from our line side workers up to myself. We're committed to constantly finding ways to enhance how we work. In fact, we implement on average about 10,000 team member ideas a year. And we share this experience with other businesses and organizations. We take care of our people, we support our communities, we share our expertise. That's the Toyota way. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you and talk a little bit of shop today. And as I said earlier, it's been a rough few years for our industry. But hopefully we can all learn from our experiences and become even stronger. At Toyota, the lessons we learn will serve us well for the rest of our lives. And that is that we're capable of great resourcefulness in difficult situations. That we can find ways to be more efficient, productive, and responsive. And finally, that we should never, ever stop listening to you, our customers. Thank you.
We've got mics around the room, and Wil's free to take a few questions. So if you just raise your hand, or if you have a card, hand it to one of our monitors, and we'll take care of that.
You mean y'all are actually going to let me off the hook this morning?
Thank you. During this tough time in Kentucky, how much dollar figure in numbers, Toyota absorbed in loss of revenue to offset, all this lost revenue that you paid to employees?
I think your question was how much lost revenue during the downturn?
Right. How much lost revenue Toyota?
Well, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to say. But let me just give you a rough image. when I look at our Kentucky plant, again, when we keep 7,000 plus team members employed, we've still got to keep the lights on, we've still got to run the compressors in the powerhouse at reduced levels. You know, we've still got to do the basic essentials. Every day that we're not able to produce is about $5.6 million. So when you multiply that across a variety of different plants, and during the worst time, we had the Kentucky plant down for a series of days here and there. The Indiana plant was down for months. The Texas plant was down for an extended period of time. It can add up pretty quickly. I've never really sat down and did the math, but at $5 million a day, it doesn't take very long. At $5 million a day at one plant, it doesn't take very long. I'm sorry I couldn't answer it with more detail. I think there was a hand over here. I'm sorry.
Could you give any more examples of the different criteria you use for evaluating processes? You touched a little bit on the walking time and the reducing the number of tools, but any of the other specific examples that you guys look for when looking for improvement?
Yes. When I mentioned there was about 28 elements that we look at, and maybe there's about 5 of them that are safety related, looking at things like ergonomics, lift, reach, bend, how many times you actually have to turn back and forth. So you have the safety components. Then you have the quality components. Does the team member have an actual opportunity to look at each connector? Does the team member have time to be able to verify that the connectors are made or that the parts are actually put in place? Does the team member have the opportunity to look at the integrity of the quality of their part as they're going from the flow rack actually to the vehicle? So what are those quality elements? There's a couple of other components in quality as well, but those are a couple. Smoothness of work. Is the team member able to start their process and actually go through a nice smooth motion throughout the term of their work? Or are they having to stop and go back and forth and make a lot of turns and things of that point? Is their work able to be easily carried through without being broken up? Does a team member have the capability of running into the next adjacent process? In other words, we work under what we call L10s. L10s is my space to start my job and finish my job, whether I've got 18 elements or 15 elements, et cetera, et cetera. If we have a situation where a team member starts their work here and they end their work here, but the next team member starts their work right here, there's a possibility of interference. Whenever there's interference, you've got the possibility of lost time. You've got the possibility of injury or whatever. So we look at those kinds of elements as well. A lot of detail. Good question.
I'm curious, of a plant your size, how many recordables do you get a year from a safety perspective?
How many recordables do we have
injuries
over the course of a year?
That is correct.
With 7,000 employees working the obvious number of work days that we have, I think the last time I took a look at the number, it was around maybe 4,000 over the course of a year. And that includes things like hearing shift, or I've got something in my eye, or any of the items that actually would equate to an OSHA recordable using the OSHA recordable rules. We run a safety rate that's right around 6 right now.
Start here and then you. First here and then you. How do you measure morale at your facilities?
Well, I think probably just like everybody else does. We look at the faces of our team members. We set up active opportunities for face-to-face communication. We do an annual employee survey. and we measure the results of team members' concerns or positive observations through those surveys. But, you know, probably those are some of the formal things that we do. But the informal thing is we insist that our management team get out there on the floor and talk to the team members. Find out what they're feeling. You know, find out what their issues or concerns are. Like that example that I used with Mr. Cho. You know, getting a chance to see firsthand what are some of the problems that they're dealing with and how can we, as workers for them, members of the management team working for them, how can we, as workers for them, help to eliminate some of their concerns. So it's that face-to-face interaction, I think, is much more important than the annual surveys. It's those monthly and weekly communication meetings where we sit down around a table with a variety of team members and openly talk about what's happening in the company. You can get a pretty good sense for how people feel.
Thank you for speaking to us today. My question is...
Where are you?
Right here.
Okay. I'm sorry. I like to see who I'm talking to.
You speak of protecting the jobs of the 7,000 employees. Is there a practice in Toyota of using contract workers?
Mm-hmm.
And
yes,
maybe you can elaborate on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when you consider the cyclical nature of our business, there is no way that you can protect the jobs of your full-time employees if you don't have some level of variable workforce. There's just physically no way to do it. So we do keep a relatively small, I think, boundary of temporary workers on site at all of our sites, and we hire pretty much exclusively to our permanent ranks from our variable ranks. So our variable team members are on site typically anywhere up to 3 years. So we get a good chance to take a look at them. They get a good chance to take a look at us. And then we pick out of that group the numbers that we pull in for permanent hire. Now, one of the things that's probably interesting is even during the downturn, when we had team members moving out to the community and we were working out in the yard, so to speak, 13-acre yard, but the yard, trying to find effective ways of improving our processes, we were still constructively looking at a reduced level, moving some of the temporary folks over to the permanent side. Because we didn't feel that it was right, because this person is a temporary employee, to cut off their avenue for full-time employment. They were loyal. They were, there through the hard times with us. And again, this point that I commented about a little bit earlier, we call shared sacrifice. We really try to make sure that everybody's got a little bit of skin in the game. That we don't have some groups of folks that are not impacted at all when things are rough. So everybody has to do a little bit, and we wanted to make sure that our variable workforce wasn't negatively impacted through the downturn as well. Now, we had to release many of them, but as soon as the economy came back, we were able to bring a big majority of them back. I think all of them that wanted to come back. Did that answer your question? Okay. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You talked a lot about implementing employee suggestions on the floor. What are your best practices for communicating and celebrating that success back to the rest of the associates?
I'm not sure I fully understood or heard your whole question. I think you were asking what are some of the practices that we use to celebrate our accomplishments?
Or like other associates, of ideas you've implemented and the success you've had from them?
You mean in terms of their ideas that they implement?
Yes, please.
That's a good question. We use a variety of different means. We We have a weekly newsletter that we send out throughout the plant. And many of these significant ideas, the group leaders can register a team member's idea as one that we want to share with the plant. And we'll go and do an article on them, put their picture in it, and send it throughout the plant so folks can see, what they do. Of course, we pay a little for some of the ideas. Some team members like that recognition better than they like the picture. Can you imagine that? Yeah. We also have a varying level where team members' ideas get registered, they get recommended by their group leader to go to the next level. Then the AM looks across their area and they identify the best idea, and it comes all the way up to what they call the president's Kaizen award. But by the time it's gotten to me, they pretty much already picked it. But they do give me an opportunity to give my opinion. But bottom line is, we try to find ways to make it more interesting for the team members. They actually compete while they're doing some other things. But what I have found, other than the money, what I have found that's the most important thing for team members is it's actually improving their own work. If they've got concern, they know that they have the company's resources behind them to find a better way. If they feel that they're walking 10 steps too many and they've got a better way to reduce it, we will help them. If they feel like the push force is too hard, we will find a way. If they feel like they're bending too much or their wrists or whatnot, not ergonomically in the best positions, we'll find a way to make it better. And I think that means a lot, knowing that your team is there to support you in that way.
Hi, I'm intrigued by this concept of not laying folks off when there's a downturn, and I wanted to understand: is this something that's treated on a case-by-case basis, or is it just this is the way we do things at Toyota? We just don't lay our people off during a downturn. And if so, is there a strategy that you employ when there's that downturn in terms of how you keep people occupied and gainfully employed? Is it just, let's look at keeping them busy, or is there a certain, as I said, is there a strategy?
Well, good question. Up until 2008, we never had to attack that problem. Right. We were constantly growing, building more and more plants, producing more and more volume. We could never even foresee the day. We talked about it. We talked about there's ups and downs in the industry, but there was an unprecedented long period of up. So we really, at least in my time, really never were faced with that. When 2008 came, it was something that we, just like many of you, could see coming. So we were able to plan and we were able to prepare. I'd like to say, yeah, we're structured in the way that we utilize our team members. Let me give you a case in point. With the situation with the earthquake and the tsunami out of Japan, it's obvious that at some point in the game there's going to be some parts that aren't going to be available. Not only in the auto industry, but in the airline industry and many other commodities industries as well. Many of you may be at some point impacted by this as well. So we have a plan already laid out to determine what are we going to do when that inevitability happens. What each department lays out a plan of what they're going to do with their employees, and they can do it up to some point. At that point, then we have to look at other avenues like community service, or we have to look at other avenues of giving team members the opportunity to take extended, vacation if they like, or whatever. So from that point of view, I would say it's a structured plan. But is it a plan that says for Harry, day 1 through day 60, these are the things you're going to do? Maybe not to that detail, but for example, we're in the process of preparing for the next Camry, and train on the Camry. Certainly, it's going to be one of our first priorities. We're responsible for Mississippi getting started up. So even though we won't be producing possibly for some period of time, we'll be sending more people to Mississippi to help them to speed up their preparation. So from that point of view, yes, it's structured. Did that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you very much.
Sure. Morning.
Yesterday we got the opportunity to listen to Mr. Womack talk about the Gemba Walk. How often do you or your management team take that opportunity to meet with your employees, go on the Gemba Walk?
I would like to say that I have a number of hours a day to walk the floor. Personally, I can get about an hour to an hour and a half, 95% of the days. As we move down into the organization, we insist that the team takes even more time. So use as much time as you can on the plant. So Gemba Walk, we all do it. We all do it as much as we have the opportunity to. I wish I could do it 3 times as much as I do. That's the most pleasant part of my day, to go and see what team members are doing, to see what kind of issues or concerns that they have, to see where I might be able to support them to improve some of the concerns or process issues that they have. But it's pretty ingrained in our organization that whenever you have time, take the walk. Go out, talk to the team members. Now, one thing we have started doing a little bit recently, years ago we used to go up and talk to team members while they were doing their process, while they were actually doing the work. Hey, how's it going? Everything fitting together okay? Any concerns or whatnot. But what we've realized recently, over the last couple of years, is sometimes that's always a benefit to talk to team members, but sometimes you can be a problem. So during their standardized work now, our rule is, as a general rule, unless there's some critical situation, we don't interrupt the team members' standardized work. We will take every break opportunity they have to be out there. We'll take lunchtime. We'll set up conversation meetings, round table meetings. We'll meet between shifts, but we generally try not to go up on the line now and interrupt their standardized work. We'll catch them in the hallways. We'll catch them, walking through the plant. We'll talk any way that we can, except when they're actually engaged in standardized work. If the issue is significant enough, we'll pull the andon cord or call their group leader and have them stop the line. We'll pull that team member off, put a team leader in their place, and go and sit down and talk with them. But we will not interrupt their standardized work. Did that answer your question? Okay.